And what's cool about Solitude with Consign is you can sort of do this weird scam thing where you go Solitude, exile a white card, resolve the exile a creature trigger, and then similarly you can consign the evoke trigger on Solitude. So a lot of cool stuff that you can do with Consign. You could even like consign your own One Ring damage trigger to buy an extra turn. Just a lot of cool stuff going on here for Ryan. And then as far as Nikachu is concerned, we've seen him on camera a couple times playing Merfolk. There are 3 copies of Harbinger of the Seas, and if I take a look at Ryan's mana base, there is one of each basic, Plains, Island, Mountain. But as far as flashing back Flage is concerned, only access to 1 Plains, 1 Mountain, gonna be unable to do that if that Harbinger of the Tides can stick on the battlefield.
Yep. And it's going to be interesting to see sort of how this goes here. And, it's going to be a close matchup, I think, no matter kind of how you shake it. So I'm interested to see how these players maneuver around things like, especially because it's open deck list, right? Like I am sure that, a lot of people knew roughly what was in Nikachu's deck this weekend, right? Like they're like, okay, there's probably 4 flares. There's some subtleties and there's some force negations. I don't know what Ryan knows now. He can make informed plays around that. I bet you also not everyone was expecting that 4 Sink into Stupor that, Nikachu was playing. Which he talked to us about how just having that chance to, like, in the late game when normally he would draw an island and just sort of be dead, have that one more turn of being able to interact was so critical for him. And, Bellamy's himself actually playing 1 Sink into Stupor here. But, both players are aware of this here. And so Ryan's going to see if he can lock up his first NRG series win along with a chance to go to our end of the year invitational. Both these players won it. I feel like Nikachu is someone who played Modern, right, and did Merfolk and did content for a long time, Devin, but recently really kind of started actually going to a lot of events. I don't know if he moved or, his work life situation got to a point where he can just more, actively do it. But he has been traveling a lot, I feel like, recently, especially for our events. And has just been killing it with Merfolk even before, MH3 dropped. I think he had a couple of top 16s with some heartbreaking losses for the top 8 at the last couple of events. And, just kind of saying like, hey, I think Merfolk's really good right now. And I kind of want to show it. And he's showing it all right.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure he was in one of our Pioneer events recently, and I think he was also playing Merfolk in Pioneer. So
Yes.
just a man who loves his craft, and you got to appreciate that. But yeah, I mean Merfolk, he's been crushing it all day. It's every time we've seen him on camera, it seemed like the deck that he's playing seems like it's well suited for the metagame. And like you said, this is going to be the test. This is probably maybe his toughest matchup he's played all tournament as far as this Jeskai control deck. I'm actually going to take a look and see if I can find out his path here. And I want to see if he's played against other control decks. Looks like no. This is the first time he's kind of played against this blue-white or Jeskai control deck. A lot of Nadu. There was a scam matchup, 2 Ruby Storms, Reanimator, Prowess. So has not had the pleasure of playing against one of these Wrath of the Skies decks. So, and one really important thing about Wrath of the Skies, it doesn't just kill the creatures, Mason. It also kills those Aether Vials.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And, this is one of those things that we talked about with Wrath of the Skies. Like, you have to put some work into it and you kind of have to mean it, right? Like, you can play Wrath of the Skies and you can just, have it be white X. And if you want to beat, like Devin O'Donnell here on Rhinos or Hammer, you can spend the 1 mana to no mana and you're happy, right? But if you want to kill anything else,
call me out like that.
You like Rhinos, what
can
I say? And so, it kind of, that was one of the things we thought about is like, well, this is a good kind of safety valve for something like that. Maybe kind of like a stronger temporary lockdown in a lot of ways. And if you mean it, it's a card that can be very, very powerful.
And the other important thing is Nikachu is our 1 seed, which means he will be on the play throughout the remainder of this top 8 if he advances further. And turn 1, Tide Shaper, not exactly the Aether Vial that he was hoping for. What's interesting to me about these control decks is a lot of people kind of maybe over-exaggerated the quote-unquote death of Aether Vial with the printing of Prismatic Ending, but a lot of these control decks aren't playing a ton of endings anymore. Like we noticed, you'll see Ryan Bellamy does not have a single copy in his deck list, going for Leyline Binding instead, which is still a fine answer to Vial, but kind of it's an additional turn away from killing that Vial where you would want to just Prismatic Ending it right away on turn 1.
Yep, we are going to see Tide Shaper attack for 2. And, I think one of the things that also happened is creature decks just didn't get the support they kind of needed for a little while. It looks like Jonathan Benito's Nikachu does have some sort of little token to signify that, hey, that's an island now. But we know that Triumph was turned off regardless. Nice. Hand prepared. Also, he's got a whole stack of them. And he's got a box. He's like, I am ready to turn lands into islands.
Love that. All right, Tide Shaper beatdowns. See what Nikachu's follow-up is here. Maybe wants to deploy a Lord or something like that, but unfortunately, with Mutavault being the second land, if we did not draw a blue source of mana, cannot deploy a Lord quite yet.
Yep. See an attack here for 4. You're seeing some Merfolk players in the background watching Nikachu, the one he played in the Swiss, being like, let's go team, as Seiloon is going to come down here. And I think Ryan has Dress Down in hand with at least Null Drifter and maybe Flays, so we might see a little in-step Dress Down action.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know if it's enough given the board state to really stabilize, but he did build his deck to do this, so he's doing what he came to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the Dress Down untapped Flage stuff is good because you get to keep the Flage in play. The one unfortunate part for Ryan is you don't get the end of the battlefield trigger. So, Nikachu kind of has sort of an additional turn of reprieve, since the Flage can't get anything on the end of the battlefield trigger and no additional life here for Ryan.
They all have Ward 1 right now, or are indestructible. So this is a good spot where
they don't now, right?
That's true. Yeah. Yes, that's true. Hey, checkmate, man. Good luck in the rest. We're going to see Ryan figure out exactly what he wants to do here. Something like Wrath the Skies for X1 could be a nice way to, maybe clean up the battlefield a little bit and reduce the damage. Definitely has 2 Flages in his hand. Has a nice mountain.
Love that mountain, by the way. All right, 3 mana. What are we going for? Flage or Drifter? We are going for Drifter.
The Null Drifter.
Null Drifto.
Yeah, and it looks like there's a little bit, and this is a kind of a weird interaction if you haven't seen it before, because it's a cast trigger, which Nikachu can't really stop. But if he is going to do something like Subtlety it or Flare Denial it, he does want to do that typically before the draw resolves. And looks like we're just going to put Solitude.
Just going to put a Solitude into play. Love it. This is kind of cool. Haven't really seen anything quite like this. But Ryan Bellamy kind of putting on a show here. Just going to put this Solitude right into play. Give it a little 3/2 lifelink. Does block pretty well.
Oh, it looks like. Oh, okay. So it looks like there's some confusion here. So looks like Bellamy's is saying this is in play, and then he was saying move to my end step. I'm going to do this. And looks like Nikachu thought about he might want to respond with something. For example, he could have evoked his own Subtlety to get it into play.
Okay.
And yeah, I think the plan here is we're going to hit the Seiloon since it's the only one you can really target. Gain some life for Jonathan. What a nice guy Ryan is.
Instead of putting the Solitude into play, we decided to kill the Seiloon. That makes a little bit more sense. I was confused as to why we were just kind of throwing out the Solitude there, but this makes a little bit more sense. And see exactly what Nikachu has as a follow-up here. We're going to put that Sink into Stupor into play untapped, giving us access to 4 mana. Maybe something like a Lord. Okay, there's the Lord. So maybe looking for Lord and a bit Mutavault, get a big attack in here. Can sacrifice one of the lands to the Annihilator. Not really care about taking 4 damage. And Ryan is really, really under the gun here.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Ryan. And if Nikachu has anything like Subtlety or a Flare Denial, this Flage that he's hoping will stabilize him might not do it, as Ryan does have 1 more in hand.
Kind of needs untapped land Wrath.
Yeah, Wrath the Skies here for X2 would be probably his best bet. And it looks like Bellamy's is taking a double check here. We had this come up in the earlier future match. Dockhand is the one that has Island Walk on its own. This one does not. So he's just kind of playing out his entire turn here and figuring out, hey, am I going to attack with this Null Drifter or not? Because like you said, sacrificing the land doesn't really matter. So maybe holding back the Null Drifter could come up. And it looks like we're going to let the ability happen and then consign the sacrifice trigger. Bellamy's is saying, all right, I got 2 blockers now. Let's go.
We got to talk to coverage, Mason. I see Just Guy Control is the label here, but I really think we got to change it to Just Guy Stifle. I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, he has 3 dress downs and 4 consigned memories. I
Yeah.
think it really is a stifle. Now, Nikachu does have dress down and a lord in hand. So it's interesting, I'm sorry, force negation and a lord. He could force the consign, which would get the Flage off the board, but then he loses the lord.
This is tough.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we kind of know the math. Bellamy's is at 8. If Nikachu animates the land and attacks with everything with the island walk, it is currently going to be 7. That puts Ryan down to 1.
Well, no,
And
it's lethal, right? Because the Tide Shapers are 3/3s. It's just 9, right?
oh, the Tide Shapers are 3/3s. Excuse me. Yeah. So yeah, that is lethal. Never mind.
Oh, but you have to sack a land, which means you don't have enough mana to go Lord and animate. So you have to find an untapped land.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to have that to actually have the lethal. Now, an untapped land off the top, pretty good spot to be. Nikachu has, I think, 20 of those left in his deck. But, he does have to have it.
So the Cavern's going to go. Yeah, I'm wondering if you force there. Yeah, it's just if you force there, then you're in such a bad spot. I don't know, though. If you force there, maybe Ryan can't attack with the Null Drifter because you're worried about just getting crackback for 6. It's a weird spot for sure.
Yeah, it is weird, too, because also if Ryan... Yeah, but it's almost like Ryan has to attack, right? Because if he has to attack to prevent the top deck Lord play. So it's almost like no matter what Ryan was going to do, he was going to attack and sequence his turn incredibly well. Just being like, okay, I'm going to do all this, and at the end of it, because I've already kind of done the math, I know I'm going to attack to force you to have to draw a land. And yep, I'm dead to Otawara, I'm dead to Island, I'm dead to all of them. I can't stop it. But, this is my way of winning. And if I get through this turn, I'm going to make you sack another thing. I'm going to Flage another thing, and it's important.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. I think if Nikachu doesn't draw an untapped land here, it's basically just curtains, right?
Yeah.
Because then
now,
the Flage can kill the Lord and...
Yeah, the Flage kill the Lord, but also you can sack whatever the Flage targets. And that's the land off the top. That's going to be lethal. And that's going to do it here. Now, Ryan could have something like a Solitude, but he doesn't. And yep, We're going to move on to game number 2. Well played there from Bellamy's, but better played there from Nikachu. Made sure to play to his outs.
That was a phenomenal game, by the way. Like you said, Ryan played that game so well, sequenced that last turn basically perfectly, setting up everything, trying to bait the counterspell with the consigned memory and just everything. And that was a really fun game to watch, Mason.
Yeah, that was a blast. I'm glad we got to watch that one on the coverage here. Let's check out Bellamy's sideboard. We have 2 Disruptor Flutes, 2 Subtlety, 2 Force Negation, 2 Deafening Silence, 1 Stern Scolding, 1 Harsh Mentor, 1 Soul Guide Lantern, 1 Null Drifter, 1 Teferi Time Reveler, a Dovin's Veto, and a Wrath of the Skies. Devin, what do you like and why?
Not a ton here. I mean, the Stern Scolding seems fine. The Wrath of the Skies seems pretty good. Past that, I mean, I guess you could disrupt your Flute Aether Vial, but it seems kind of narrow. Teferi Time Raveler, I guess, is maybe more appealing because you know that Nikachu has the flares and the Force Negations. So Teferi, Scolding, Wrath, maybe Flare, or Flute, but probably not Flute.
And we're gonna have to see how he wants to do it. I could see on the play maybe having that extra Teferi. You can maybe before you do it, maybe on the draw we cut it. We'll have to see exactly how those players want to go about it with this all information. But speaking of the information, let's check out Nikachu real quick, see what he has in his sideboard for this matchup. We have 3 Spreading Seas, 3 Harbinger of the Tides, 3 Tashani Tide Binders, 3 Subtlety, 2 Merfolk Trickster, and a Dismember. Devin, what do you like and why?
Too many Harbingers. I like the Tashana's Tidebinders, mostly because a lot of, like, you saw that game where there was the Flage ETB, the Solitude ETB, and being able to Tashana's Tidebinder, that specific end of the battlefield trigger seems pretty important. And you know that Bellamy has 4 copies of the One Ring that are likely staying in. So I think I want the Tidebinders. Subtlety is interesting. It almost feels to me like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like Bellamy is just playing Jeskai Scam. And traditionally speaking, Subtlety is good against Grief because you Subtlety the Grief and you just kind of time walk them. And it seems like sort of a similar thing here, where if you just Subtlety Bellamy's Flage or Null Drifter in the spot where he's going for, like, you can clearly tell he's going for the Dress Down or the Consigned Memory, it seems like that might be a good plan.
Yeah, it is very, very impactful here. I like it. It's also just a nice flash threat, right?
Yeah.
we talked about that, we could see a Teferi coming in. Well, that could be a way to, stop that. And, Subtlety is just a powerful card. So I'm really interested to see what we're going to do here because, Nikachu might be like, because it's open deck list, right? He's like, well, these dismembers kill the Null Drifters, but not the Falacias. So, like, do I keep some? Do I just turn them all into Subtleties? It's going to be very interesting. Let's show what these players are playing for here today when it comes to dollar dues and pointy oints, as we have $2,400 for first and 30 points, along with an invite to our end of the year championship. We have joined some of our other players like, May French, Dominic Harvey. All of them are already in, and today one more person is going to join them. And tomorrow we're going to have our end of the season one from the points bid. So these large amount of points could help you there, along with player of the year. You can see the points and the money going on down here. So no matter what happens, these players have locked a minimum of $800 and 20 leaderboard points. Let's take a look at our qualified players really quick here. I called out some of them earlier, but Steven Dykman won our championship last year, got that Pro Tour invite, went to Pro Tour Chicago, and now he's going to be back early next year when we do our invitational. Matthew Hoey, someone who I believe has played every single championship except one, didn't really like that he missed that last year, so he's back and he got his W early on. Sean Gallagher, someone who we saw help with the Nadu deck that we saw in our match against Nikachu. He locked it up with blue-white control, did great. He's taking the weekend off here, it seems. Dominic Harvey, back-to-back, just absolutely got out of the booth, got into the battlefield, and is now currently our player of the year when it comes to the point race with a dot, and has skipped the last two events because of work and the Pro Tour, and
He
just
wasn't able to play.
And he's just number one still. And when he won,
matter.
we interviewed him, and Dom said, "Oh, I'm going to be player of the year. Don't worry about it." And you love to see it from Dom. And honestly, when he does it after skipping the first, two of the events, it's going to be an insane heel turn for Dom, who, let's face it, kind of, a little bit of a babyface heel already. May French, we saw earlier, she got top 16 today playing Nadu. She won it with Living In, the last MH2 modern paper tournament. She got there. And then our team trio winners, and Ty, Ken, and Justin, they all won with a lot of control decks. And we saw Ty, put up a solid 6-2 today, playing the Ruby Storm deck. 16 seats still at large. The winner of today's tournament will be joining these faces. And then the two players at large, which we can check our leaderboard real quick here as our players are taking a second to stretch their legs, get their sideboards double checked and all of that. But we have our leaderboard points, and as of right now, if it were in 10, Hatch would be number one, and Harrison would be number two. Being number one, number two with a white name means you're going to make it to our championship at the end of the year. Orange names are already players who are qualified, so you're seeing all of these names. They are there. Now, if you're already qualified, you can become player of the year, which beyond the bragging rights that Dom Harvey is trying to take from them all, you can also get free entry into all of our events. So, when Steven Dykman, who won our championship last year and was player of the year, he's back at our championship, and every energy he goes to for all of 2024, Devin, they're free. He just gets in. He just gets to show up and play, and that could be you as well. So we'd love to reward consistent results. Now, as we saw here, Joey had kind of an okay weekend. Connor, I believe, finished up X&2 outside of top 8. Not quite good enough for the top 8, but got a lot of points. And if Harrison has a bad day tomorrow and Connor maybe sneaks into the top 8, he could jump Harrison and be in that spot there. Travis Williams had a little bit of a bad day today, but still very much live for the leaderboard race. And that's one of the cool things about this, Devin, right, is that this leaderboard rewards you over a long period of time. The players who are in this race, they are in it for the whole year. We just have this sort of halfway point where we sort of be like, hey, you're out in front. Okay, you're in. And a lot of those players continue playing because when you're that far ahead, you might be up for the player of the year spot, which is so exciting. Another thing about player of the year, Devin, we didn't mention, is we have pod play for our championship. And one of the perks of being player of the year, Devin, is you get to swap any two people in the pods.
Love it.
So, maybe you got Dom Harvey in your pod.
I'm swapping Dom out of my pod. You kidding me?
Yeah, I'm just like, Dom, get out of here. And anyone whose matchup I think is good, get in here. Just out of the pod, And we're going to see these players get ready. If Nikachu makes it, he's playing Merfolk. You don't even have to see his deck list. You're just like, I am good against Merfolk. I would like for Dom Harvey to not crush me on Amulet Titan, please.
No matter what format, even if it's standard, he will find a way to play Merfolk in standard probably.
Yeah, I think Nikachu just likes playing, disruptive, aggressive decks. So I could see him doing, some of that. Maybe a little Esper, a little heel turn, as it looks like an Aether Vial. Does he have the Consign to Memory? Oh, it would have been
That'd be kind of sick.
huge.
Yeah.
I do think those probably left, but we'll have to see here.
All right, now the question is, does Ryan have, I was going to say the dress down, does not. Well, maybe he has the dress down, but has tap land on turn 2. Interesting, because I wonder if maybe, I don't know if the Rockman Triumph was just drawn, but I figure if you wanted to hold up mana for Consign and you had the Consign, you surely would have fired it off in the Vial. So that leads me to believe either he was bluffing or just drew the Triumph.
Yeah, I think the most logical thing is he played the Triumph, because from Nikachu's side, he's just going to jam into the Consign, because
Right,
if he
yeah.
doesn't, it's just going to end up with a Flage happening to him. So it looks like we're going to see a Solitude right away
Now the
on this
question is,
result.
are we consigning the Solitude? Do you think Ryan had the Consign and saved it? There's no way, right?
I mean, maybe, like, if he knew he had the Solitude and that's all he had.
Yeah,
Yeah,
possibly.
and now he's got a 3/2 lifelinker. And honestly, Devin, we saw Ephemerate be a big thing in these 4-color decks, and Ryan's kind of using Consign as a more powerful Ephemerate when it comes to universal applicity. But
yeah, so I actually think Ryan did have the Consign for the Vial, and he's like, you know what? That's fine. You can have it. I don't care.
yeah, it's true. If Nikachu's kept a 1-lander Vial hand, that would have been insane. But anything else, Ryan, you're right. He's probably more happy getting this in and just being like, hey, I'm going to 2-for-1 you and gain a little life.
Yeah. So Nikachu takes the Vial up to 2. Now, as far as Nikachu's hand is concerned, it's not bad. I see 2 Lords, a Harbinger, a Force, an Otawara, and a Cavern. So maybe he wants to deploy something like Cavern, Harbinger, which really does mess with Ryan's mana base. And then you can also maybe deploy a Lord, maybe just take a hit from the Solitude. We are just going to pass here. So potentially wants to hold up Hardcast Force Negation for a 1-ring, which also kind of makes sense. You want to be able to protect yourself against the ring, but not have to pitch a card if Ryan does have that.
Yeah, and you're going to see Ryan attack for 3 here, offering Nikachu the trade. And if you're Ryan, you're probably pretty happy to take the trade. Maybe you use something like a Galvanic Discharge just while the game's good. But, just your job is just like, hey, if I trade off all of my, spells at a 2-for-1 rate with you, I will just get ahead and I will win.
So here's the Lord. So presumably Nikachu is going to go tick up to 3, and we're going to go attack Violin, the Harbinger, still holding up the Hardcast Force Negation, would be my guess. Or sorry, attack for 2 rather.
Yeah, we drew Minamo, School of Water's Edge.
Oh, we drew a basic island, right?
Well, it depends, like this Fei-Lu, we might get a little freaky, depends on how long the game goes. Now, one of the interesting things here is Ryan, looks like he's going to Galvanic Discharge now. And Devin, that means he is exposed to getting locked out by the Harbinger of the Seas.
That is true. Now, Ryan does have more copies of Solitude, 3 more copies of Solitude in the deck. Obviously, Nikachu is going to deploy the Lord or the Harbinger right now. Ryan says okay. But yeah, so if Ryan does find another copy of Solitude, good to go. But yeah, as of right now, only blue mana, which if you look at the cards that are currently castable, not a lot here. I mean, there's counter spells, consigns, dress downs, and the 1-rings, and I guess Null Drifter.
Yeah, Null Drifter and the 1-ring, 2 really big things. And, as we've seen, Ryan is playing a bunch of consigned memories in his deck. So, he will be able to evoke Null Drifter and then counter the trigger if he wants to. But for now, he's going to have to rely on this Solitude. And, if not a lot changes, he will win the race. But, secret is Merfolk have a lot of Merfolk.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game to see how this kind of plays out. It really depends on what Merfolk Nikachu draws in like a specific sequence. I believe he picked up a copy of Sink into Stupor. Now, thing is, you don't really want to bounce that Solitude, because if there's another white card in Ryan's hand, that can kind of unlock, sort of get him out from under the Harbinger. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe you just go. And he's also in a weird position where maybe he doesn't want to play the Otawara, wants to save that, because you could just go I guess you could go Lord, hold up Hardcast Force. You could also just play the Sink into Stupor.
Yeah, it's a very complicated board state. And that was one of the cool things, about the Merfolk deck we were talking about earlier. It used to just be, Lords and Spreading Seas. And that was the deck. And as time's gone on, it's gotten a lot more play to it. And we're seeing, Nikachu even am I supposed to play this Otawara so I can double spell? Or am I supposed to use the Otawara to bounce something and like protect my Harbinger? Because you could hold up, Otawara Harbinger as like a little bit of a lock with the Aether Vial, but decides he wants to play this and have the Stupor in hand.
Mason, I will have you know, if you take a look at right underneath Ryan Bellamy's name, coverage has done us a big favor.
Let's go!
I just saw that. I don't know when they did it, but I just noticed it. So
you love to see it.
Thank you, production.
Yeah, and it looks like we got a judge question away from the table. Honestly, no clue.
It probably involves consigned memory. I'm guessing.
Yeah. Normally I would make a joke about how Ryan's so young, he's never played against Aether Vial, and he's a zoomer. But Ryan's just beat the dog crap out of me in tournaments before with humans, so I know he knows Aether Vial, so that can't be it. So the question is, what card does Ryan have that's making them ask some questions? It might also be a layers thing.
We got a dress down Harbinger questions, perhaps?
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Do you know the answer?
I do not remember the answer, but at some point I knew it.
I'm sure chat knows, because chat knows everything, but
I think it doesn't work, but yeah, chat will let us know. Lord of Atlantis off the top again, attack for 3. Ryan getting knocked down, and it looks like this dress down's happening, and if Ryan might just be doing this just because he needs to set up like a null drifter, but it'll be interesting to know, like, does the land work or not?
And you saw that trade there from Nikachu, just trades off the Lord to get that Solitude off the battlefield, really recognizing, man, Nikachu has played this game very, very well. Just, knows exactly what he needs to trade for, knows what he needs to fight over, saved that Force Negation for the One Ring the whole game. And just getting rewarded. This has been a masterclass of the fish.
Yep. And it looks like, Bellamy's is like, okay, now that my dress down's gone, end of turn, I'm going to Solitude down this Harbinger before you can, draw a card to hardcast Force Negation. If you have Flare, then I'll make you lose the Lord. Well played here by both players. And yeah, like you're saying, Jonathan's play just in general has been so tight. So he drew another Harbinger. Yeah.
Ryan's like, oh no.
Yeah, tough. Yeah, you see him shake his head like, yep,
shaking the head.
Now,
this is like the Solitude bug. You Solitude one of them, it replaces it with itself. And looking at Ryan's hand, as we talked about this before, not a lot of spells that can be cast off of 5 blue mana. Does have the One Ring, and that would certainly be probably Ryan's best top deck. And that's something that we're looking for. But other than that, I'm not sure exactly what's going to get him out of this, as we see a Harbinger. That is, I think, gonna change the math a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
in terms of the clock.
This does 7 damage now. So this turn it goes down, and then we have another body in play. So it becomes a 2-turn clock here. And yeah, one of the things about playing Merfolk, as we're seeing in a big attack here across for, I believe, 10, is you got to be good at combat and that sort of stuff. And Jonathan's done a great job so far this tournament. He does have 2 counterspells in hand. This might be the end for Bellamy's. Yeah, and he's just gonna have to pick him up. Jonathan wins that game and moves on to our finals with Merfolk. And remember, we had the interview with him a couple rounds ago, Devin, and he said, honestly, Harbinger's been kind of mid, but it's great against these blue control decks. I kind of just locked them out. They can't cast the removal spells. And what happened in this game? We played against the blue control deck. Mana didn't quite allow for us to fetch around the Harbinger in the early turns, and we died. So congratulations there to Jonathan, and a good run for Bellamy's.
Yeah, that was just a phenomenally played game by both sides. You saw Ryan navigate that one turn sequence game 1, just sequence the cards perfectly in terms of getting Nikachu to fight over the right things. And Nikachu just played that game 2 extremely well as well. So very, very fun match to watch. Well played by both players. And we got Merfolk in the finals of the first modern event, Mason. Did you ever think you'd hear those words?
When I first saw Flare of Denial and Harbinger of the Seas in the file, I thought I might, and here we are in the finals. These are really strong cards, and we're excited to see. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get to our backup match. Those players are taking a second to run to the bathroom in between games, so we'll catch the rest of the top 4 in just a few minutes. Hello and welcome back to the St. Louis Modern 10K Showdown. I'm your host, Mr. Clark, joined my co-host, Devin O'Donnell, better known as Doomwake, and today we have the rest of the top four and the finals for you. Sometimes we do the finals in the morning, not this time. We're doing it today. We want you all to know who the winner is, and these players are shuffling up, so let's head on down because they are done with their break and they're ready to go. So Johnny, earlier today, played the Jeskai deck 6-0, double drew, made top 8, beat one of the other decks. Now, Patrick, Bant Nadu, we saw him beat Scam. We saw him beat Blue-White Control proper. Can he beat the extra spot removal that Jeskai brings? We'll have to wait and see, as it does look like they are in game number 3.
Yeah, the one time that we kind of we walked in on Patrick against, it was, I believe it was Garrick, and Garrick was playing the more traditional blue white control, and you really got to see how the Nadu deck is just able, like, you really cannot fight over specifically Nadu with removal spells. You kind of need to fight it on the stack, because every time you spend a removal spell on it, you're going to be down a card in the exchange, and that definitely, combined with the Urza sagas, really can, like, just make it so that the control deck can't really ever effectively trade one for one with all these threats. And that's a very important aspect of this matchup. Now, when it comes to Johnny's deck list, we talked about how Johnny's got those, has a bunch of Wrath of the Skies and then Phlages, where maybe you can Wrath to help clean up some of the construct tokens. Notably, Wrath also cleans up the Shuko. So if Patrick says go, maybe goes for a Saga construct, untap construct, make a Shuko, set up for a combo next turn. Johnny fires up a counterspell, untap Wrath can clean up everything, and maybe not have to worry about getting comboed on the following turn.
Yep. And we're going to have to see. And honestly, one of the big things I think the world's seen from this event so far today, Devin, is that Wrath of the Skies is the real deal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Very good card. Now, if everyone's playing Scion of Dracos and Murkides as the main threats, then, obviously not a very good card. And, I kind of heard that during the previous season a little bit. But believe it or not, Devin, some of the best things you can do in Magic is play the 1 and 2 mana cards. And not every deck can be a Murktide or a Scion deck. Just not the way of the world.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, this control deck for a control deck has a surprisingly low curve, right? You have Tambios, you have Preordains, Tune the Narrative, Galvanic Discharge, Spell Snare, all costing 1 mana. So you have plenty of things to do with all of your mana. And I think that Johnny has really kind of built this deck in that specific way to maximize the Phlages, right? We saw, Johnny has really just been in a lot of situations, just like, interact, Flage on 3, maybe a couple fetch lands, and just always being able to slam Flage on 4 when he has it in the graveyard.
Yep. Now we are going to see Patrick's decided that his 6-card hand is good enough.
Yeah, Johnny's hand looks fine too. I think Spell, Snare, Discharge, Wrath, 3 lands. What I want to do is I want to take a look at Patrick's deck list and look at 2 drops. So 4 Springheart Nantuko, 4 Wall of Roots, and that's what we're looking at. I think that's pretty much it. So, but those are still both premium targets for Spell Snare.
Yeah, now Johnny ended up bottoming the Spell Snare. This open deck list, I think he decided the Dress Down was a little bit better. And it's interesting, like having it play out this way, Dress Down's probably going to end up being a lot better, but could have definitely been a very high impact card. We'll have to see how the game plays out. But Dress Down buys you a lot of time. And honestly, if we saw Ryan Bellamy's do the stifle thing, we might see, Johnny do it here, depending on what Patrick does. We could see an end of turn Dress Down into the Flage.
Yeah, and the Spell Snare does get a little bit worse if you expect Patrick to play a 1-drop, because you have to discharge the 1-drop, therefore you can't hold up the Spell Snare on turn 2. So it does kind of make a little bit of sense, because you figure by the time that you're able to hold up the Spell Snare, it's likely not going to be relevant, because Patrick's already going to be on his 3rd turn. So it does kind of make sense there, as we see a Surveil land for Patrick. And, Patrick, obviously, thinking about the idea of Johnny having a counterspell. We know that Johnny doesn't have one, but does have that Dress Down. And like you mentioned, I mean, we could see Dress Down untap land 3 Flage, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on Patrick.
Yeah, and if Patrick doesn't do something that impacts the board this turn, that's just Johnny's best route to victory, right? Like, okay, take this opportunity when you're not doing much, get board presence, and then start pressuring you. And if you build up, Wrath of the Skies. Just like clear the board up. Now we're going to have to see what Patrick wants to do. Looks like he is just going to pass.
You love to. Johnny has to be feeling very, very good about this. And I wonder now. I want to take a look at Johnny's deck list again. I think that's the only copy of Dress Down. So
Mhm.
this wasn't necessarily something that Johnny had intended when you
Mm.
were building the deck, and we're actually not going to go for it, Mason. That kind of surprises me.
Yeah, I wonder. Maybe Johnny didn't have the third. I thought he had the third landed hand lined up. Maybe he didn't. But also could just be like, I just don't want to like walk into anything here. But yeah, he definitely, Bellamy's that we just saw in the top four here built his deck with this kind of play in mind, right?
Hmm.
He'd be doing that a lot. And Patrick laughing, he's like, oh no, Wrath Disguise went to the graveyard. And Johnny's like, yep. And he's like, can't be good. Anyways, yeah, so it's not something that he kind of has, really like as a thing his deck does. It's a thing his deck gets to do. And
Hmm.
that difference is, very pronounced here.
Yeah, and it's also, it's we're not sure. I'm just trying to speculate here, but it is entirely possible that Johnny maybe because that interaction hasn't come up before, maybe he's not
Mhm.
familiar with the interaction. So, it's not the most common thing. So it is entirely possible that that is happening. Maybe he was playing around something like Beseju. So plenty of things that could be happening here as we see an untapped third land here for Patrick. And I wonder what that signifies. Perhaps a endurance, maybe? Yeah.
Yep. And one thing I've learned from watching Johnny so far this weekend is Johnny loves to bluff having a card. Like there's
Oh
a
yeah.
Tameo. We could have played a Tameo this turn. Would have been pretty good. Like on the maybe you have the read on its endurance, whatever. But we all know that he doesn't really have much that's going to be stopped by him playing the Tameo. But he wants to, represent Involt Polarity, Force Negation, Flame of Anor, and make Patrick kind of play around these cards. Very patient, very tactical player.
And we'll see what Patrick's follow up is going to be here. We do see a copy of Nadu. Now, worth noting, there is one energy left over, which means that if Johnny goes for land 4, Wrath for 2, you, with that one energy, can blow up threes. So if Patrick were to deploy the Nadu, then both the Nadu and the Endurance would get cleaned up. And you have to assume, if you're in Patrick's seat, that Wrath is in the hand, because why else would Johnny bin that copy of Wrath of the Skies?
Yep.
And this Teferi makes this dress down play really awkward because it's possible Johnny was setting up for dress down this turn, untap Flage next turn with the mana floating, but now that Teferi makes that play impossible because if the Teferi resolves, you can't dress down in the end phase where you would need to get that Flage online.
Yep. Well, here, Johnny, just use the dress down there as a cantrip, kind of, admitting like, hey, I'm probably not going to be able to kill this Teferi for a little bit as well. Looks like we're just making sure our life totals are correct here, real quick. But probably going to see a fetching of a Surveil land. Like we talked about before, Johnny doesn't quite have the tools to answer this Teferi. And what's about to end up happening is Patrick has, this Teferi in hand. I'm sorry, in play, and has Nadu in hand, and very close to just starting to combo off.
Yeah, and the Teferi being able to just shut off Johnny of casting anything, any interaction at instant speed to stop the combo, and that's going to be very very tough here for our Jeskai player. Going to need a good draw step here. That is a Galvanic Discharge, which is not bad, but one energy. Mason quick math, 1+3, that's 4. Teferi, unfortunately for Johnny, has 5 loyalty, so not going to be able to take out the Teferi with that.
Yeah, you could see something like Flage plus it, and then you actually get to
Mhm.
save some energy, and that
Yeah.
would mean you get to hold up Wrath Disguise for more on the next turn. But you might die. That being said, you're not going to really win with the Teferian play when it comes to interacting with the combo anyway. So it's really a matter of does Johnny, how does he want to do this here? I have to imagine, flaging and then Galvanic Discharging is the most efficient line here, but
Yeah, because at that point, if you're not going to kill the Teferi this turn, what is the plan, right? You're just going to let Patrick have this Teferian play unimpeded the entire time. So yeah, I mean, it feels like a situation where it sucks, but I think you got to get it off the battlefield eventually.
mhm.
And like you said, I mean, even if you don't want to go for the Wrath next turn, maybe you just go for a Fleech next turn because you're going to have enough cards in the graveyard.
Yep. So we are going to see Flage deal 3, knock the fairy down to 2. Galvanic Discharge will give you 3 energy, putting Johnny up to 4, and he can spend 2. And I mean, if you've gone this
Well,
far,
now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if the play here is just discharge the endurance Teferi goes up to 3 next turn, and then you Flage the Teferi next turn, because Flage can't kill the Endurance.
Sure, that's fair. I totally see that as a doable line. My biggest problem is you can't Wrath Disguise a Nadu away. And if
Yeah.
Patrick just goes like play a Nadu as a way to basically threaten, like, hey, check, essentially.
Oh, so you want the extra energy, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think both lines make sense, right? Like if Patrick doesn't have a Nadu and he just like plays some other like Wall of Roots, Delayed Halfling creatures, getting the Flage on board, getting that as a removal spell, incredibly nice. If Patrick has, Nadu, he gets a lot worse. So it looks like Patrick does have a Summoner's Pact and I believe a Nadu in hand. I think his hand's actually just pack something Nadu, which is a lot of available options to him.
I think the something is second pact.
Well, I listed that. So what's the third card? Is it third
Oh.
pact? Nothing like third lunch. As we're gonna see Nadu come.
Maybe
By the way,
Cord?
maybe it's Cord. I love that Nadu art and it looks so good on those sleeves. I don't know. It's just doing it.
So, I mean, as you mentioned, Johnny just sequenced this beautifully and just played into that, or Johnny was able to set up this wrath, and it's going to be really, really backbreaking. And you have to imagine Patrick was aware of this because of that earlier wrath of the skies that got graveyarded. So, it seems like this was at least on Patrick's radar, because you even saw the head shake of, of when Johnny bid that wrath. Patrick was like, So
Mhm.
it seemed like this was at least on Patrick's radar.
Yeah, I think this is a classic moment where Patrick identified that one of the possible worlds he's living in is that Johnny has another wrath. And I think he was hoping that the world he was living in is that Johnny is mana screwed and needs to draw lands.
Yeah.
Because that's like the only other real reason. And, the reality was that Johnny needed, a fourth land so he'd been the Wrath of the Skies. But,
Funny enough, Johnny found the third wrath too. So, Patrick maybe chose to not play on the second one. Surely he's not going to play on the third one.
Yeah, and we're seeing just how patient Johnny is here. We've seen this all weekend long, Like I would be personally incredibly tempted just to be like, all right, end of turn, or sorry, on my turn, play Flage, bolt you. You better have Cord into Nadu into Shuko if you're gonna win, and just kind of force them to have it. Johnny here has a spell snare, is going to take his time and his counterspell too, and just slowly but surely accrue value and just make sure not to give Patrick a chance to, to burst through. And hopefully for his sake, he can win before Patrick has time to assemble another combo.
Yeah, you got to admit, Flage that turn had to have been pretty tempting. Because I mean, I guess the question is, how likely is it you die when Patrick has 3 lands and no other permanents in play? Right? It's like it has to be like Nadu land, Shuko hit 2 lands, and then Spring Hard hit. You know what I mean? It's like it
Yeah.
seems very, very unlikely.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing here is Johnny's trying to set up having Flage plus Counterspell up.
Mhm.
And so, he's just like, okay, I'm going to attack the Tameo, get the clues, and I'll get there eventually. Now, eventually needs to happen sooner than later. Looks like Johnny is sort of smelling weakness here and is going to counterspell this Quarter Calling for 0, which is assuredly getting a Dryad Arbor. Nothing else could really be happening here in Open Deckless Tournament.
Yeah, this is an interesting spot where Johnny's trying to figure out if the Dryad Arbor is going to unlock potential 4 mana plays or just like potential double spell turns. Maybe he's worried about, like, say, you let the Cord resolve, you give Patrick 4 mana, and then you're worried about Nadu plus Veil of Summer or something along those lines. And I do believe Patrick did have a copy of Veil of Summer in hand. So it's, maybe that might be coming to fruition if that is what Johnny is thinking about. But yeah, if you're in Patrick's spot, I believe the hand is still, 2 Quarter Callings and a Summoner's Pact. So, I mean, maybe if you don't draw land, you just go Summoner's Pact for Nadu, cast the Nadu, use the Veil to fight over the counter spell, and then I guess pray that your Dryad Arbor doesn't die, because then you can't pay for Pact.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. What can Patrick do?
Now, I want to get the wording on Wrath of the Skies. Does it say non-land or destroy creature?
It says destroy creature,
Okay,
artifact,
so
and enchantment.
it gets Dryad Arbor then.
Yeah. Yeah, if we said non-land, then it could hit planeswalkers, and that's just a little too much.
Yeah.
White doesn't quite get that. I think it's like tertiary and it's color pie. So,
all right. So I believe Patrick has picked up a copy of Shuko. So, to the best of my knowledge, I believe the hand is Pact, Cord, Veil, Shuko. So, if you're in Patrick's seat, yeah, I wonder. It's like, do you just go? Oh, we're gonna go for a Mason. I think we might see a die to pack trigger game here.
Oh, it brings my cold curmudgeon heart such joy to see a die to the pack trigger. Let me tell you, Devin, nothing hits the same.
Tell me how you really feel, Mason.
I love it. Honestly, I love how the rules of Magic have become more inclusive, and we've done a much better job at rewinding things. But I tell you what, nothing. You miss the pack trigger, you lose the game. Cards have drawbacks.
Not only do you lose the game, but you also get disqualified. You're out of here.
You're gone. You lose the game. But no, I mean, and we're gonna see Patrick. Yeah, I mean, listen, you got this far, buddy. It's Nadu time.
You got to get the Nadu.
Yeah, and you see Johnny kind of shaking his head, and
Johnny
just like, I need you to cast it.
Yeah,
you know.
So this is going to be big because what's going to happen here is Patrick is going to cast Nadu, Johnny's going to cast Counterspell, and Patrick's going to cast Veil of Summer. If there is not a land on top for Patrick, the game is over because Johnny's going to untap Wrath of the Skies, the Triad Arbor, and Patrick will have 3 mana remaining. So let's see. Do we have the land?
All right. So yeah, you definitely lead with the Nadu.
We get a tap blue for that. I don't think it matters, but because the breeding pool cast he has 4 green anyway, so it doesn't matter. But
yeah.
All right,
you get a warning. You're good. It happens. All right, Veil of Summer.
Is there a land?
If there's a land, it is massive.
Patrick
kind of knows. You see it.
Oh,
because Patrick also doesn't know that his Dryad said. He just knows he's in trouble if it happens.
It's not a land.
All right, not a land. Now all we need is Johnny to see it. Johnny packs the clue, draw a card, and this is one of those moments where Dryad Arbor better be up there with the creatures because it can go bye-bye. Honestly, it can go bye-bye and the Tamiyo stays, which is just insane value. Now, will Johnny see it? He has Flage as the out for it. He has Wrath of the Skies.
The Flage is in the graveyard.
Yeah, I mean, we have lots of answers. Now, I guess actually you can't Flage because you could hit the Nadu trigger and then reveal a land.
Okay.
So it has to be Wrath.
So it's got to be Wrath.
If we didn't have, honestly, if we didn't have the Wrath in our hand, I would do the Flage thing. I'd just be like, whatever. You're going to be tapped out next turn. I'll have a Flage in play. But honestly, Devin, I think the way Johnny's playing, I don't think he sees it.
No, don't cast the Flage.
Well,
Johnny.
I guess if he's attacking with the Tamiyo,
oh no.
Maybe he's just drawing cards just in case. He's just like, I'm gonna X is 0 anyway, so I might as well try to get a card out of it. And here comes Wrath of the Skies. And that's gonna do it.
Oh man. Kill your Dryad Arbor. Nice pack trigger.
Yep. And we see a concession there. Honestly, the way Johnny was playing, I don't know if he realized he killed the Dryad Arbor. But either way, congratulations to Johnny there. We're going to move on to our finals. Well played by both players. I like that kind of line from Patrick. If I'm going to win, I need to take a little bit of a risk. Now's my chance to do it. It's only going to get worse. And, it might even go that bad. He has to have Wrath of the Skies. He has a kill spell. I might top deck into another land. Didn't work out. Congratulations to him. Moving on. To the finals with this Jeskai Wizards deck against Nikachu or Merfolk. And congratulations to Patrick playing Nadu. Nadu didn't win. That's all we got to say.
True.
It made the finals. I'm sorry, the semifinals. It made the top 8. We had a couple in the top 16. Didn't win the tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see, Devin, who's going to win, Jeskai Wizards or Merfolk. Choose now. Who's your champion? Who you going for?
I mean, I know Nikachu's the 1 seed, but I mean, looking at this Jeskai deck list, Wrath of the Skies, Galvanic Discharge, Flame of Venor, Flage, Snapcaster Mage, I think I got to give it to Johnny, but Nikachu has been playing out of his mind all day, has been just kind of, we saw Nikachu beat Ryan Bellamy, just played completely very, very well played. And it's going to be one hell of a match.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting either way because I'm really torn, right? Like in my heart of heart, I want Flage to win. It's like, it's my card. It's so exciting. I like that kind of deck. And I think both players have been playing so well. Nikachu has just had really great sort of attacks and blocks. And, honestly, the only time he seemed surprised all day was when we got surprised too against the Sylvan Safekeeper, right? Which was kind of a weird interaction. It seemed like the only time all day where he wasn't like yeah, I kind of knew this could happen. He's been playing on top of this game. Inversely, Johnny has been the same thing, undefeated in the Swiss, playing in this Jeskai Wizards deck, has been taking, very cautious and measured lines, but also pulling the trigger a little bit every now and again. And, just has found himself in the finals. He's on the draw. Cavern Souls and Aether Vial can be a bit of a problem for some of his cards. But like you said, discharge, snap, discharge. That's the new bolt, snap, bolt. And that fuels your wrath. It turns into a 2-mana play. So I don't know. I'm going to go with Nikachu just because we need the back and forth. We need the narrative to happen. So, not only will one of them win, you and I will win. We're going to really quickly, though, shout out our sponsor, Ultimate Guard. And, thank them so much for helping put on this stream. Ultimate Guard, is working with us here at the NRG series to bring you Paper Magic. We know that you all love Paper Magic, so make sure to click that follow button. That way you don't miss any of it. We have nearly 2,000 of you here in the chat right now. Click that follow button. That way you don't miss anything. We're going to be here on July 13th and the 14th with our next big Modern Showdown, but we also have coverage tomorrow. So Chicagoland, if you want to come out and play, Modern 10K Showdown. You got that going on Sunday, 5K Legacy Trial. If you like Legacy, this is your chance to play some Paper Legacy. Very, very exciting. Remember, if you win your Showdown, you're in our end of the year championship. So speaking of which, Devin, the winner of this next match, Jeskai Wizards, Merfolk, one of them is going to go to our end of the year championship. It's going to be very exciting to see which one of those is going to happen.
Yeah, this is going to be an amazing finals. That was a very, very stressful semifinals. That just being able to watch that die to pack trigger because the Wrath of the Skies killed the Dryad Arbor. What just an amazing matchup, and I cannot wait for the finals, Mason. It's going to be an absolute banger.